The Homesteads to Hollywood podcast is a CJSW original production funded by the Radio Meter Program Grant through the Community Radio Fund of Canada. In the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we would also like to acknowledge the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. This includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, which includes the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The city of Calgary, traditionally recognized by the Blackfoot name of Mohkinstsis, is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6.
Part 6. Cornerstones.
From Cool Runnings to The Revenant and Brokeback Mountain to The Last of Us, cinematic star power didn't just happen to Alberta. In fact, the province has a long and illustrious history in film that has developed into an internationally renowned industry. From Homesteads to Hollywood, Alberta takes center stage in this 10-part exploration into how things came to be and where they're going. My name is Liam Daw.
And I'm Ingrid Vargas. Together we'll be peeling back the layers of Alberta's intricate film industry to answer the question, just how did we get here? There are many elements that each play their role in this ecosystem, such as a storied past, a vibrant underground, a deep talent pool in the trades, and of course, the continuous run-on blockbusters.
You can see bubbles of that popping up every now and again where it could have happened, where Alberta could have had that kind of more distinct voice that was acknowledged outside of the province. And I think we're still it's simmering. It's there. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it burst out at some point where people are like, wow, like this movie came out of Calgary? Like, how did that happen?
In Part 5, The Prairie Problem, we were immersed in the first-hand experiences of Alberta-based filmmakers Kyle Thomas, Paige Bedreau, and Contra. The conversation took plenty of turns, but the topic of funding disparity for indie projects across the Canadian prairies kept resurfacing. The root issues are complex and bureaucratic, but we thought it was at least important to bring attention to that sort of discourse within Alberta's media sector.
It's not a secret that the process of funding arts projects in the province isn't perfect. In fact, it's far from it. But there are plenty of full-time resources and organizations across Alberta that deserve credit in the tapestry that is the film industry. These are Alberta's film institutions.
In Canada, and by extension, Alberta, securing funding for the arts is tedious and inherently geopolitical. Unlike our neighbors to the south, there isn't really a pool of private investors waiting to sink money into independent film pitches. Instead, there are numerous government-regulated funding bodies that disperse funds to projects at their own discretion, creating this landscape that ties policy directly to arts vitality. So, depending on who's in power, support for mediums like film fluctuates.
At the top, organizations such as Canada Council for the Arts and Telefilm oversee national funding capacities, a process that many across the country feel is skewed to the big three of Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. Here in Alberta, funding can stem from the Alberta Foundation for the Arts and the Alberta Media Fund, but this is by no means an exhaustive list. There are a handful of associations that exist closer to the ground that provide upfront resources directly to artists. The Calgary Society of Independent Filmmakers, or CSIF, is one of the aforementioned institutions that has provided support for over 45 years.
My name is Alex Mitchell. I'm a multidisciplinary independent filmmaker. I'm a member of IATSE 212 and 669 as a production sound mixer and digital image technician, respectively. And I run my own independent freelancing company called DCPI Film Services. So the CSIF is the Calgary Society of Independent Filmmakers. It was started in 1978 by about a dozen local filmmakers who wanted to just enrich and cultivate a culture of independent film production here in Southern Alberta. CSIF is a nonprofit, artist-run organization that sort of encourages the production, development, and dissemination of independent film in Southern Alberta and also Canada-wide. And I got involved when I was in high school. So this would have been in 2003. And I just showed up because at the time they were in building J1 on the Curry Barracks. There is a community of like-minded people who are approaching the medium from the same way that you are. So maybe they're looking for just artists that they can commune with and find just sort of like-minded souls to bounce ideas off of, or just not to feel so alone, because it's a big oil town. There's not as many arts folks to interact with on a day-to-day basis. We also support production by renting out equipment or providing space for post-production. We have a pretty strong education bent. We do a lot of workshops and training. And then we also are an exhibitor. We have the Artifact Film Festival, nay, the $100 Film Festival. We also have members' night screenings and other just sort of material that's programmed kind of off calendar. So we try to approach filmmaking and encourage the medium from all sorts of different angles.
For decades, CSIF has existed as a local cornerstone to independent film. Many have gone on to make names for themselves across the continent, first put their foot into the proverbial door at CSIF. The Society offers support in a variety of ways, whether you're into grassroots film and want a sense of community, or simply just need to rent some equipment.
The majority of people who show up to the CSIF are probably looking to rent equipment. Even with gear being as affordable and ubiquitous as it is, you find stuff on AliExpress, you find stuff on Amazon Marketplace, there's still a lot of things that are just sort of expensive or a pain in the ass to keep around. And so I think the majority of people who come through our doors are probably looking to get a membership so that they can rent equipment from us. I think that there are a lot of people who join up because they are looking for community, but my intuition is telling me that I would say the majority of interactions that we have are on sort of like a nuts and bolts production support kind of context. We think of ourselves as a community first. A lot of people do show up thinking, oh, they're like a rental house, which is certainly an aspect of what we do, but it's not our primary goal. And if someone is only going to interact with the CSIF kind of on that level, I just don't really think that you're kind of getting the most out of us that you can get. And so if you're going to approach CSIF and the thing that's going to get you through the door is that you need to rent some C-stands or a piece of camera support equipment or a lens or whatever, great. But I'd really encourage you to sort of stick around and go, oh, these member night screenings where I can show my work and get, immediate feedback are wonderful. The courses that we teach are really going to help me develop as an independent filmmaker. The festivals that we put on are a great place to network and be exposed to the kinds of films that you wouldn't necessarily see or be shown by like the algorithms on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. I would say that we're like really here to help enrich your artistic practice as opposed to just be a place where you get a boom pole, I think sometimes it is hard to communicate to an Alberta audience the value of locally produced and developed content. I think a lot of people are going through some pretty hard times and, telling them that, hey, we'd like to use municipal funds to help artists maybe is not exactly the kind of thing that they're hoping to hear. So there's always kind of going to be that bit of an uphill battle in terms of enriching or cultivating like an arts culture here, because people don't understand beyond sort of like a financial incentive why that's important to develop an identity. I don't want to boil it down to just the name of us, but we're the Calgary Society of Independent Filmmakers, and I think that our definition of what constitutes cinema is growing and what constitutes filmmaking is growing as well. But I think from our inception and from our current incarnation, we are still supporting a particular kind of film productions. As the medium grows and expands and as audiences' relationship to that content changes, I think that we are trying to do our best to advocate for the ways in which traditional cinema is unique and still relevant in 2024.
My name is Scott Lang, and I'm the president and programming chair at the Calgary Cinematheque, and I've been there, I think, about 7 years now, but I've been president for about a year. Calgary Cinematheque, I believe, started in 2007 or so. It was created by sort of a group of friends. There were some profs from the university here. There was some local filmmakers, and then people who were just, the local accountant, but they were a huge fan of movies. So they wanted to create this sort of cinematic experience where they were showing, I guess, what we called repertory cinema, which is movies that are older, but you're showing them within a new context in terms of education, but also in terms of how an old movie reflects the times that we live in now. I've always thought it was funny considering how, we have such a beautiful landscape that's often used by Hollywood and cinema, that Calgary doesn't have kind of a stronger independent cinema, stronger experimental cinema. And I think that that's to do with the fact that maybe there hasn't been a lot of encouragement of those things necessarily. A lot of people want to move on from Calgary, and it's like, why? There's so much here. There's so much stories here. There's so much landscapes to take advantage of. And so I think that for myself, how Calgary Cinematheque serves that is I want to, and this is sort of my vision of the programming, is sort of I want to show films that are kind of pushing the envelope, pushing the boundaries, causing people to have questions. And we have it in our mandate that we want to show challenging cinema, meaning not movies that everyone's going to come out and say, that was very nice. We want movies that even are divisive, that are going to cause that conversation to happen. That kind of thing creates discussion. And I think within a cultural context, it's a very exciting thing to do.
While support for artists is extended through organizations such as CSIF, AMPIA, and AMAS, Scott Lang and his peers at the Calgary Cinematheque are offering programming that enriches cinema culture for, anybody. The collective fills a very niche but important role in the holistic ecosystem of film in the city, even if some of the arrangements end up being more audacious than others.
And I think the exciting thing about Cinematheque is we can program that kind of thing. Like movies where people are like, are you allowed to show that? But I think that that's kind of why people like Cinematheque, and that's kind of the programming that I've wanted to push, is that you're going to see movies that question maybe what you've learned so far or question how you view the world. And that's not a problematic thing to do, because there are movies that do that in a very special and unique way. And you're like, wow, that was actually done in a truly provocative fashion. And so that's kind of where I hope the Cinematheque lies within the cinema culture. We're showing these films that you might think are archaic, but are actually maybe more boundary pushing than what we're doing today in cinema. I think that maybe in Alberta, people don't feel that they can push that envelope a bit. And I think that they can. And I mean, that's kind of what my dream is to do through Cinematheque, where it's like, I'm going to show these bonkers movies that are good. And people are going to be like, well, if you got away with showing that in the theater, maybe we can, make a movie like that we can show in a theater. So it's kind of like, I want to kind of push that envelope personally. And then we have a good team on programming who is sort of in line with that, and they have their own ideas that they put in there. Well, screening is interesting, right? Because, we're getting into a point where Cinematheque started in 2007. You didn't have all these streaming options, and now everybody can find everything online. And so I'm always trying to think of movies that are extremely hard to find online or that are not online at all. So I'm always looking for that kind of thing. We usually screen at the Globe Theatre. We used to do at the Calgary Public Library. We still have a relationship with them, but we haven't done anything with them as of yet. And we have some community associations that we might be screening with, but generally it is at the Globe Theatre. And pretty much all the film orgs in Calgary are kind of battling this sort of situation where there's not a lot of venues. Like there's only the Globe. The Uptown closed, the Plaza, they kind of do their own programming, and so we don't have a lot of options of where to screen, but the Globe's been really good to us, and we're kind of hoping to expand that into different organizations now. But generally the Globe, yeah.
Scott raises the concerning but factual point that outside of the Globe, there aren't really any remaining venues in Calgary that are functional art house cinemas. The word institution can be placed onto intangible collectives like some of the ones we've highlighted, but it also applies to the historical structures that have hosted invaluable programming. Despite its relatively young architecture, Alberta was and still is home to many significant theaters that have contributed to its film legacy, but they are unfortunately a dying breed. The University of Calgary's Institute for the Humanities recently launched the Calgary Atlas Project, which seeks to recover crucial stories of Calgary's past and present. One of their endeavors includes the publication of Calgary Goes to the Movies, a visual guide and tour of sorts through the city's theatrical landmarks over the years. There's simply too much content to reference the entire thing, but it's got plenty of interesting facts and anecdotes on everything from Calgary's very first screenings at Hull's Opera House in 1893, the Allen family's mid-century theater dynasty, and all the way up until the Eau Claire IMAX, Calgary's latest film relic to close its doors. We'll include a link to the project on our webpage, but you can view it directly online by searching Calgary Goes to the Movies or by grabbing a physical copy here in town at the Esker Foundation, Shelf Life Books, The Next Page, Pages, or the Lougheed House. If this type of history interests you, we also recommend checking out the documentary Magic Hours, directed by Calgary filmmaker Levi Hallwell. Available on CBC Gem, the film delves into the bastions of independent cinema across Alberta and their struggles to remain open. From flagships like the Metro in Edmonton to small-town theaters such as the Roxy in Crow's Nest Pass or the Jewel in Stettler, Magic Hours displays the somber realities of those fighting to keep these buildings around.
I love this place. I love working here. I love the work. I love the people. I love the movies. But there would have to be a major change in the industry for me to want to keep doing this. The rare occasion when I get someone on the phone that deals with the exhibitors, they don't want to talk to me. And I get it. We're just not big enough to make any difference to them, period. But the industry is just exhausting.
Alberta is a big place, with so many different groups and organizations operating within the film industry across this diverse province. It makes a lot of sense that there would be some sort of body that acts as a network between each of the jurisdictions. Enter the Alberta Media Arts Alliance Society, or AMAS. Established in 1991 after several meetings during the Hinton Independent Film and Media Festival, AMAS originally brought 4 indie film factions from around the province into unity: Edmonton's Film and Video Arts Society, or FAVA, CSIF, M-Media, and the Quick Draw Animation Society. Its member base has grown considerably over 3 decades to now include 27 separate entities. The almost, but not quite union-like society runs through a board of directors representing its diverse members. At the helm of that board is Executive Director Vicki Van Chau.
Hi, my name is Vicki Van Chau. I'm the Executive Director of the Alberta Media Arts Alliance Society, or also known as AMAS. AMAS is a provincial arts service organization that exists to help advocate, educate, and celebrate the media arts in Alberta. So we connect and build bridges between the community of media artists, media art organizations, film festivals, to the general public. We're almost considered not a union, but almost like a union for filmmakers and the organizations that support filmmakers. So we want to make sure that their voices are heard at the table in terms of funding bodies, government bodies, and in terms of just the community itself to realize how important film and filmmakers are to the landscape here. AMAS started because all the media arts centers and film festivals realize their strength in unity. And, all of these centers are quite small. Like their staff, some of the centers only have 1 staff member to 5 staff members, and they don't have time within their daily operations to be able to advocate for themselves. And so AMAS sort of exists to help them be able to speak on behalf of them so that, they can concentrate on doing what they do best, which is supporting artists, programming artists, and helping produce and present the work that they do. Typically, our membership is the media arts centers and larger film festivals that have been around for a while, but we've noticed that our membership is increasing with a lot of new collectives that are kind of popping up and creating spaces for themselves. And a lot of them tend to be collectives that are centered around sort of DEIA sort of initiatives, a lot of BIPOC-centered artist and film collectives that are starting to pop up. And so we're really wanting to reach out to those collectives to be able to bring them into the fold and make sure that they're represented on the same level as, say, like the Calgary International Film Festival, or like sort of like the bigger media art centers like CSIF, M Media, and Quick Draw.
As Alberta's industry continues to shape into a dichotomy between independent and blockbuster films, the importance of AMAS is felt from its advocacy for Albertan creatives on all levels. Sometimes it can feel like a cutthroat business, but Vicki notes that collaboration within the alliance is where its real strength lies.
I'm able to connect these sort of organizations who have all this experience and foundation to be able to help and collaborate with a lot of these smaller collectives to make sure that, there's an environment that supports all, and especially outside of Calgary and Edmonton. So there's all these communities that are popping up. Even the reason why we're doing the conference at Red Deer is because Red Deer College has these new facilities to help support sort of filmmakers and, animators who are kind of popping up in that area as well. And the centers, I think, are really great because it's not like they're like, oh, they're taking away our audience or like they're competing against us. It's never that case. It's always like, oh, how can I help you? How can we share resources? How can we collaborate to make sure that you can thrive in your own little spaces? So I think what's really great about this city and this province is I find there's just everyone's so willing to help each other and to uplift organizations that are emerging from all these like niche spaces. We're very fortunate to have a seat at the table at some of these discussions. For example, most recently, the new CEO of Canada Council, Michelle Chawla, she's been doing these cross-country engagement sessions. And so I sat at the table with sort of these large organizations like Arts Commons, the Calgary Phil, Alberta Opera, Alberta Ballet, to be able to have a chance to kind of make our case in terms of like how Canada Council can do better to make sure that Alberta artists and the Alberta organizations here can thrive and be able to be sustainable. In terms of AMAS ourselves, we offer a lot of programs based on what we've known. So a lot of the times the funders come back saying that Alberta artists, they're just not applying or their grants are just not that well written. So we're like, okay, well, let's change that. Let's make sure that our Alberta artists have the chance to have mentorship and the ability to work on their grants. So we set up like a one-to-one grant mentoring program where we pair up an established Alberta artist with an emerging artist, and they work together on creating a better grant proposal and then sort of helping them to set them up for success. There is always going to be this sort of fight, especially in this province. I mean, we always tend to have to always work harder than the other Canadian sort of counterparts, other cities like Vancouver and Toronto. But I find that makes for really resilient filmmakers and also really collaborative filmmakers. Whereas when you're in sort of like this pool, there's so much competition that I find filmmakers end up kind of siloing themselves and not necessarily kind of trying to collaborate with others. They're just trying to, get their head above water.
While many of Alberta's independent theatres and cinematic institutions have been lost to history, there has perhaps never been a better time to be a filmmaker here. By that, we mean that the support available to independents through all of the existing organizations is accessible as ever. A huge thank you goes out to Alex Mitchell, Scott Lang, and Vicki Van Chau for helping articulate a few pieces of what is a rather large mosaic. With an already jam-packed episode, we decided to break off one element of institutions into its own standalone feature. Stay with us for Part 7 as we put the spotlight onto Alberta's great film festivals.
I think that's an important role that we play is as productions get made here, whether they're the independent features that are those launch pads or whether those bigger films, we like to be the place where they can celebrate, the makers can celebrate with the general public together on what they've created, because we don't create these in a vacuum. They're created for audiences. And what we do specially at the festival is we share that experience. Again, instead of watching them at home from a streaming service. We're the place where people get to come together, high five their cousin that worked on that movie, who did the costumes, who did the makeup. They actually get to see the work. And I think that's really important.
Homesteads to Hollywood is a CJSW original recorded and produced in Calgary, Alberta. Our outreach coordinator is Natalie Schmidt. Audio editing is from Maria Pladneva. Assistant production and research from Ingrid Vargas, and is executively produced by myself, Liam Daw. Our theme song is Clean Conscience by Calgary's Young Neighbors. Music for this episode, also out of Calgary, comes from Bad Bodies. The film clip used earlier in the episode comes from the 2024 CBC Gem documentary Magic Hours, directed by Levi Hallwell.